Yeah, absolutely. You can't, the whole point here is to grow, and the way you grow is change yourself, and you can't change yourself if you don't know who you are. You see, you can't learn anything if you don't know who you are, and that's called becoming authentic. When you become an authentic person, then you are just exactly who you are. You recognize you have fears. You recognize that, you have these buttons that people push that make you upset or angry or annoyed. And you realize all of that and you accept it. And you say, yep, that's me. Those are my choices. I choose to get angry. It's not that, Susie makes me angry, but I choose to get angry and realize that that's you. And then you can actually do something about it. But until you get to that point where you accept yourself and become authentic, you can't do anything about it. All you do is blame other people. Oh, it's not me, it's Susie. She's always rude to me, and, that upsets me. So it's not my problem, it's Susie's problem. Well, it is your problem. The reason you react that way to Susie's rudeness is because you have fear. That's why you react that way. It's your choice to how you react. You get rid of that fear, and even though Susie's rude, it doesn't make you angry anymore because that fear's gone. Matter of fact, you start feeling some compassion for Susie because, she must be really miserable. She's an unhappy person. That's why she's rude like that all the time, because she has fears and she's not happy. And she's living a life of misery and not doing well with her challenges. So instead of being angered by what she says, you have compassion for her and you start to think, I wonder how I could help her out. Is there anything I could do that would make Susie feel a little better about herself? And that just changes your whole perspective. So it's not that you somehow make Susie act nicer, but what you do is once you know yourself and you know where those fears are and that ego and you accept it, then you can do something to change it. Just have an intent. I don't want to be that way. And if you have that strong intent, I don't want to be that way. Now, don't say, I don't want to act that way. That's different. Acting and being are two different things. If you say, I don't want to act that way, then what you'll do is just stuff that fear down deeper where you can't see it. And when you're really upset, maybe you'll learn to smile rather than grimace. So you won't act that way, but that if you are that way and just aren't acting that way, that's going to drive you crazy too. That's worse than acting the way you are. So be authentic, be yourself, find out who you really are, and then look at it and say, is that the way you want to be? And if you say, well, not actually, I'm angry all the time, I'm sad, I feel sorry for myself, all these other things, you say, well, if that's not what you want to be, then change it. You change it just with your intent, strong intent at the being level to be different, to change it. And if you have that intention, it'll happen. Because then when you start acting those ways that you don't want to be, when you start being that way you don't want to be, you'll notice it. You'll notice it right away. And rather than just cover it over, you'll want to root it out. I don't want to be that way. And you'll think about it. What triggered me? Okay, I don't want to get triggered with those things anymore. And it will change. You'll get rid of it. And then once you get rid of that fear, you feel so light. It's like your life has just gotten so much better, because you don't realize that most of your choices are being made by your fear. Your free will is taken over by your fear. That's why you're making choices. If you can get that fear to stop making your choices will be much better. Your choices will start creating good relationships and, happy environments and a better job, and just all sorts of good things will start to happen to you once the fear stops making your choices. You have to take that back over. You have to say, it's my free will. I don't want to be that way. I'm going to be different. The way most people are is they blame it on somebody else. Many people walk around with a feeling of being inadequate, not being good enough. They're insecure. And when somebody says something like, well, that job you did the other day just wasn't very good, well, that triggers that feeling of being inadequate, of being insecure. And that's what makes us upset about it. It's that fear of not doing well, or let's say fear that people won't like us. So when somebody says something negative to us, well, it triggers that fear that we're not going to be loved or liked. And that's what gets us angry. It's not that other person that's making us angry. It's our fear that makes us angry. And until you become aware of that, then you're back to being a victim, right? Well, I'm a perfectly nice guy. It's just I have all these mean people in my life and they keep making me angry and upset. Well, then you just blame it on other people. And if you do that, you can never change it because you don't own it. If you don't own it, you can't change it. So the first step is becoming authentic. Who am I? What do I want to do? Because, we got all these layers. We have cultural layers. We learn how to be polite. We learn how to say things that people expect us to hear. We have all these little niceties that we say to each other and they don't mean a thing. Like, well, how are you today, Mario? And you say, just fine. And I say, good. And then we just keep walking, and when I say, how are you? I don't really want to know how you are. And when you say fine, you really don't want to tell me how you are, And we learn all of these polite things that we do all the time that aren't us. It's us acting. We're acting a role. So we have a persona, a role, an image that we live up to. Oh, I'm a nice person. I'm polite, and I help people out, and I do this and that, and we have this thing, and we live this image. We live this role. What our society expects of us, what our family expects of us, what our significant other expects of us, and that's not us. That's just the role we play. And most people, when I ask most people, well, really, who are you? Who's the authentic you? They kind of look at me bug-eyed and think, I don't have any idea. Most people have no clue who they really are inside because they've been faking it so long. They've been going through these niceties and not really meaning it so long that they don't know anymore who they are, what's inside, and they're afraid to find out. Because all this little things I've learned in my culture, I get by. As long as I do all those things, I get by. But if I were just me, that would be terrible. Nobody would like me. Everybody would think I was awful if I just was me. Well, that's just your fear talking. It's not true at all. You probably are a pretty nice person, but you've got all of these beliefs and ego and things that are covering you up. And you need to just dig down in there and say, well, who am I really? Well, let me just be who I am and let the chips fall where they may. And then I'll go back and look where those chips fell and I'll learn something. And if I don't like it, I'll change me. If I do like it, I'll do more of that. If I don't like it, I'll do less of that. Now you're on a road to growing up, to changing. Before you were just on a road as living as a zombie. You just go through the motions because that's what everybody does. And you're not really connected to yourself or anybody else. And then everybody's kind of like a zombie going through life in their own space, in their own mind, in their own way. And they're not really relating very much to anybody else. And that makes them more and more self-focused and self-centered. And that's how we live our lives, very shallowly without really getting too deep because that deep stuff is scary. We might tell too much, give some of our secrets away, let people know how we really are, be vulnerable. Well, when you're authentic, you are vulnerable. Everybody's vulnerable. Well, you have to.
No fault in that.
Yeah, no fault in that. Live with that. Deal with that. And if it's good, good. If it's not, change it. So that's the idea of how one goes about growing up. Start with becoming authentic.